Google is working to make its own chips more adaptable, which will in turn make them more appealing to a wider swath of customers. The idea that companies are less locked into one vendor and they can move workloads to where compute is the cheapest or the most available. Meta is looking for ways to lower inference costs. Every hyperscaler, they want more leverage in GPU pricing negotiations. I mean, this has been a supply and demand issue for the past few years, right? There's so much compute that needs to be built out. If Google gets close, that would be a huge win because it would mean that those custom AI chips could work outside of Google Cloud.
The tech world just witnessed something that hasn't happened in over a decade. 3 of the most powerful companies on Earth have simultaneously declared war on each other, and the battlefield isn't social media or smartphones. It's the tiny chips that will power every single AI system for the next 20 years. Jensen Huang, the leather jacket-wearing CEO of Nvidia, has been running victory laps around Silicon Valley for months. His company's GPUs became the gold rush pickaxes of the AI boom, with every tech giant desperately buying whatever Nvidia could produce. But something shifted this week. Google and Amazon Web Services just unveiled their most aggressive AI chip strategies ever, and for the first time, Jensen Huang's empire faces a genuine threat. This isn't just about corporate competition. The company that wins this war will control how artificial intelligence develops, who gets access to it, and ultimately how the future unfolds. And right now, that future is being decided in conference rooms, chip fabrication plants, and data centers across the globe. The stakes couldn't be higher. We're talking about a market that's exploding from billions to potentially trillions of dollars. Every AI model, every chatbot, every automated system needs these chips to function. Without them, the AI revolution stops dead in its tracks. And until recently, Nvidia held all the cards. But here's where things get fascinating. Google and AWS aren't trying to beat Nvidia at its own game. They're changing the game entirely. While Jensen Huang has been shuttling between Washington and Beijing, trying to navigate an increasingly complex geopolitical landscape, his competitors have been quietly building something that could undermine everything Nvidia has created. Let me explain what's really happening here, because the surface-level story misses the deeper transformation. For 20 years, computing followed a predictable pattern. Moore's law told us that chips would get twice as powerful every 2 years, and everyone built their businesses around that assumption.
The GPUs, everyone so far except for Google has relied on Nvidia to use their own chips. It's just that they haven't had that kind of success that Google has had with TPUs. Google so far is ahead in that, but clearly Amazon is trying to catch up when it comes to their own chips.
But that era is over. General-purpose computing has hit a wall, and the demand for computational power is growing exponentially faster than traditional chips can deliver. Jensen Huang saw this coming before almost anyone else. He pivoted Nvidia from a gaming graphics company to an AI powerhouse, creating not just chips, but an entire ecosystem. CUDA, Nvidia's programming platform, became the language of AI development. Developers learned it, companies built around it, and suddenly switching away from Nvidia became almost impossible. The numbers tell the story. 6 years ago, traditional CPUs powered 90% of the world's supercomputers. Today, they're down to less than 15%. The rest? All accelerated computing, and Nvidia owns the lion's share. It's been a masterclass in strategic positioning, but Google has been playing a longer game than most people realize. Their TPU chips, tensor processing units, started as an internal project to power Google's own AI services. Now, with the TPU v5 lineup, they're making a bold claim. You don't need Nvidia to build world-class AI. And they're backing it up with Gemini, their suite of AI models that rivals anything OpenAI or Anthropic has produced. The genius of Google's approach lies in vertical integration. They control everything from the silicon to the software, from the cloud infrastructure to the AI models themselves. When you use Google Cloud for AI, you're not just renting compute time, you're buying into an entire ecosystem designed to work seamlessly together. And critically, they're offering this at prices that undercut Nvidia significantly.
Google is working to make its own chips more adaptable, which will in turn make them more appealing to a wider swath of customers. Started selling those chips to outside customers. The limits showed up. They were harder to drop into existing systems. The AI race, it is certainly not just about peak performance anymore. It's about margins and scale, very much so recently. It's the idea that companies are less locked into one vendor and they can move workloads to where compute is the cheapest or the most available.
Amazon Web Services is taking a different but equally threatening approach. Their Trainium and Inferentia chips might not win any performance benchmarks against Nvidia's latest offerings, but that's not the point. AWS understands scale better than anyone. They know that most businesses don't need the absolute fastest chip. They need reliable, cost-effective compute at massive scale. Think about it from a business perspective. If you're a company spending millions on AI infrastructure and AWS offers you chips that are 80% as powerful as Nvidia's, but at 50% of the cost, integrated seamlessly into the AWS ecosystem you're already using, that's a compelling proposition. Multiply that across thousands of companies, and suddenly Nvidia's dominance doesn't look so secure. The timing of these moves is no coincidence. AI compute demand is exploding in ways nobody fully anticipated. Training a single large language model now costs hundreds of millions of dollars. Companies are desperate for any edge in compute efficiency, and that desperation creates opportunity for challengers. But Jensen Huang isn't sitting still. In fact, he's accelerating. Nvidia's product roadmap has gone from releasing new architectures every few years to launching major updates annually, sometimes even faster. The H100, H200, B100, and the upcoming Blackwell architecture each promises significant performance gains over its predecessor. It's as if Nvidia is trying to outrun its competition through sheer innovation velocity. This acceleration serves multiple purposes. First, it keeps Nvidia ahead technologically. Second, it makes it harder for developers to switch ecosystems when the performance gap keeps widening. And third, it sends a message: Nvidia isn't going to cede an inch of this market without a fight. The geopolitical dimension adds another layer of complexity. Nvidia finds itself in an unprecedented position, effectively banned from selling its most advanced chips to China while simultaneously facing Chinese restrictions. Jensen Huang has been navigating this carefully, making multiple trips to China this year alone, trying to find a middle ground that satisfies both Washington and Beijing while protecting Nvidia's business interests. This creates an opening for Google and AWS. While Nvidia wrestles with export controls and international tensions, its competitors can focus on capturing market share in less politically charged markets.
Nvidia's advantage is its ecosystem, so that's its chips and its CUDA software. Meta is looking for ways to lower inference costs. Every hyperscaler, they want more leverage in GPU pricing negotiation. I mean, this has been a supply and demand issue for the past few years, right? There's so much compute that needs to be built out. If Google gets close, that would be a huge win because it would mean that those custom AI chips could work outside of Google Cloud.
They're also investing heavily in developing chips specifically for inference, the process of running AI models rather than training them, which represents a massive and growing market. The enterprise market is where this battle will likely be won or lost. Large corporations are making decisions now about their AI infrastructure that will lock them into ecosystems for years. Google is pushing hard here, emphasizing not just their chips, but their entire AI stack. They're telling enterprises, why cobble together solutions from multiple vendors when you can get everything from one source? AWS is making a similar pitch, but with a different angle. They're emphasizing flexibility and cost control. Their message is clear. You don't need to pay Nvidia prices to get AI capabilities. Their custom chips, combined with their cloud services, can deliver what most businesses actually need at a fraction of the cost.
And different chips will be useful for developing such different models and for running those models, for doing the inference. Well, no company likes any kind of competition, right? So I'm sure NVIDIA would just be happier if they didn't exist. But clearly the case that NVIDIA is going to lose share over time in the big world of AI compute is speeding up all of these computations, making far more applications possible across all industries.
The developer ecosystem represents another crucial battleground. NVIDIA's CUDA has been dominant for so long that it's become the default for AI development. But both Google and AWS are investing heavily in alternative frameworks and tools. They're making it easier for developers to port their code, offering incentives for early adopters, and gradually building communities around their platforms. This isn't happening overnight. Ecosystem transitions in technology typically take years, sometimes decades. But the AI boom has compressed timelines across the industry. Decisions that might have taken years are being made in months. Investments that might have been spread over a decade are being deployed immediately. The financial implications are staggering. Nvidia's market capitalization has soared past $1 trillion, making it one of the most valuable companies in the world. But that valuation assumes continued dominance in AI chips. If Google and AWS can capture even 20–30% of the market, it would represent hundreds of billions in value shifting between companies. For startups and smaller companies, this competition is mostly good news. More options mean better prices, more innovation, and less risk of being locked into a single vendor. But it also means more complexity. Choosing the right AI infrastructure partner has become a strategic decision that could determine a company's competitive position for years to come. The technical differences between these platforms matter, but perhaps not as much as the business models. Nvidia sells chips and software licenses. Google and AWS sell complete solutions. This fundamental difference in approach shapes everything from pricing to support to long-term strategic alignment. Looking ahead, several factors will determine who wins this war. First, raw performance still matters. If Nvidia can maintain a significant speed advantage, many customers will pay the premium. Second, ease of use becomes crucial as AI adoption broadens beyond tech giants to mainstream businesses. Third, cost efficiency will matter more as AI moves from experimental to operational budgets. But perhaps the most important factor is ecosystem lock-in. Whichever platform captures developers early, trains them on their tools, and makes switching costs prohibitively high will have an enormous advantage. This is why all three companies are investing so heavily, not just in hardware, but in software, documentation, training programs, and developer relations. The next 18 months will be critical. Major AI models are being trained right now that will define the next generation of AI applications. The infrastructure decisions being made today will ripple through the industry for years, and somewhere in the middle of it all, Jensen Huang is probably planning his next move, knowing that in technology, today's dominant player can become tomorrow's cautionary tale if they're not careful. This chip war isn't just about silicon and software, it's about who controls the foundational layer of the AI revolution. It's about whether the future of artificial intelligence will be dominated by a single company or distributed among multiple players. And ultimately, it's about whether innovation will be constrained by monopoly or accelerated by competition. The battle lines are drawn, the weapons are deployed, and the future of AI hangs in the balance. In this war, there are no neutral parties. Every company, every developer, every user will be affected by the outcome. The only certainty is that the landscape of AI computing will look very different a year from now than it does today. That's it for today, folks. See you in the next video.